Part 1. The Arena of Fools.
The crowd's roar shook the entire orbital station like thunder trapped in a metal can. 60,000 alien spectators from across the galaxy had packed into the Nexus Arena, their excited screeches, clicks and howls creating a symphony of bloodlust that would make a medieval coliseum blush with shame. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the fighter's preparation chamber, checking her equipment one final time. Her hands moved with the practiced precision of someone who had stared death in the face more times than she cared to count. The plasma burns on her left arm still ached from her last encounter with the Krillian Warfleet, but pain was just another Tuesday for Earth's most decorated soldier. "You know, Sarah," came the voice of Commander Jake Morrison through her comm implant, "when I said we needed a diplomatic solution to the Zentari conflict, I wasn't exactly thinking about you volunteering to get your head ripped off in their sacred combat arena." Sarah smirked, adjusting the tactical vest that had seen her through 3 interstellar wars.
"Oh, come on, Jake.
Where's your sense of adventure? Besides, someone has to show these overgrown lizards that humans don't back down from a fight." The irony wasn't lost on her. 6 months ago, the Zentari Empire had issued its ultimatum to the human colonies: surrender or face annihilation. Their terms were simple and brutal, much like everything else about their warrior culture. But they had offered one alternative, one last chance that played to their obsession with combat prowess.
Trial by combat.
Their greatest champion against humanity's chosen representative. The Galactic Council had laughed when Earth accepted the challenge. Humans, they whispered among themselves, were nothing more than clever primates with delusions of grandeur. Soft creatures from a backwater planet who had barely crawled beyond their own solar system. What chance could they possibly have against Vexthera the Destroyer, the undefeated champion of the Zentari Empire? Sarah had volunteered before the council even finished reading the challenge. "Sarah," Jake's voice carried a weight of concern that made her chest tighten, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone. We could still try negotiating with the Zentari High Command."
Negotiate.
Sarah's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Jake, these are the same beings who turned the Meridian colonies into radioactive dust because their ambassador accidentally used the wrong fork at a state dinner. Negotiation isn't exactly their strong suit." The preparation chamber door hissed open, and in walked Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the expedition's chief medical officer and Sarah's closest friend since their academy days. Elena's face wore the expression of someone trying very hard not to panic. "I've run the scans on Vexthera's previous fights," Elena said, her tablet trembling slightly in her hands. "Sarah, this thing isn't just big. It's a walking nightmare. 8 feet tall, natural armor plating, and reflexes that make a viper look sluggish. It's killed 47 challengers without breaking a sweat." Sarah turned to face her friend, and Elena took an involuntary step backward. There was something in Sarah's eyes that hadn't been there before the Meridian massacre. Something cold and calculating that made even her closest allies uncomfortable. "Elena, do you remember what happened to Colony 7? Sarah's voice was deceptively calm. Elena nodded, her throat suddenly dry. Colony 7 had been Sarah's hometown. 20,000 civilians, including Sarah's younger sister Amy, had been vaporized when the Zentari decided that humanity's expansion into the Kepler sector violated their territorial claims. "Good," Sarah continued, checking the charge on her sidearm. "Because I haven't forgotten a single face. Every night when I close my eyes, I see Amy's smile. I hear her laugh. And then I remember that she's gone because some alien overlord decided that human lives don't matter." The arena's announcement system crackled to life, speaking in the guttural language of the Zentari before switching to Galactic Standard. "Citizens of the Empire, the time has come for the trial of the human species. Witness as Vexthera the Destroyer crushes another pathetic challenger beneath his mighty claws." Sarah's smile was predatory. "You know what the funny thing is? They actually think this is going to be easy." Jake's voice came through the comm again. "Sarah, just remember the plan. You don't have to kill him. You just have to survive long enough to prove humanity's worth. The rules say that if you last 10 minutes against their champion, the challenge is considered met." "Oh, Jake," Sarah said, walking toward the arena entrance as the doors began to open, "I think you're misunderstanding my intentions here." The roar that greeted Sarah's entrance into the arena was deafening, but not in the way she expected. Instead of cheers, the crowd was laughing. 60,000 alien voices united in mocking amusement at the sight of the small human female who dared to face their champion. The arena itself was a marvel of engineering and sadism. A circular platform suspended over a bottomless pit, with energy barriers preventing any escape. The surface was scarred with blast marks and stained with the blood of countless previous challengers. Overhead, holographic displays showed Sarah's vital signs and combat statistics to the jeering crowd. From the opposite entrance emerged Vexthera the Destroyer, and Sarah had to admit that Elena's description hadn't done the creature justice. The Zentari champion stood nearly 9 feet tall, its reptilian form covered in natural armor plating that gleamed under the arena lights. Each of its 4 arms ended in claws that could slice through steel, and its eyes glowed with the confident arrogance of someone who had never known defeat. The crowd's laughter grew louder as Vexthera flexed its massive frame, putting on a show for its adoring fans. It beat its chest with all 4 arms, producing a sound like thunder, before pointing one clawed finger directly at Sarah. Human, Vexthera's voice boomed across the arena, translated by the universal communicator, I will make your death swift. You have shown courage by accepting this challenge, misguided though it may be. Sarah looked up at the towering alien and felt something bubbling up from deep in her chest. It started as a chuckle, then grew into full-blown laughter that echoed through the arena. The crowd fell silent, confused by this unexpected reaction. Oh, that's rich, Sarah said, wiping tears from her eyes. You know, Vex, I've heard that line before. The Krillian death squads said something similar right before I turned their flagship into scrap metal. The Draconian pirates thought they were being merciful too, right up until I fed them their own tentacles. Vexthera's confidence wavered slightly at Sarah's casual tone, but it quickly recovered. Brave words for someone about to die, human. I have killed 47 challengers.
You will be 48. 47.
Sarah's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Wow, that's almost impressive. Of course, I've lost count of how many hostiles I've eliminated, but I think the last official tally was somewhere around 3,000. But hey, who's keeping track? The arena fell completely silent. Even the announcers seemed at a loss for words. Sarah began walking in a slow circle around Vexthera, her movements casual and relaxed. You know what I find funny about all you so-called warrior races? You're all so impressed with your natural advantages. Your size, your strength, your claws and fangs. But you've never learned the most important lesson about warfare. And what would that be, human? Vexthera snarled, beginning to circle as well. Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. That the most dangerous predator isn't always the biggest one in the pack. The starting horn blared across the arena, and Vexthera immediately lunged forward with surprising speed for something its size. Its 4 arms spread wide, intending to catch Sarah in an inescapable embrace that would crush every bone in her body. Sarah waited until the last possible second, then dropped into a slide that carried her between the champion's legs. As she passed beneath the massive alien, her combat knife found the gap in its armor plating just behind the knee. Vexthera roared in pain and surprise as dark blue blood began to flow from the wound. Oops, Sarah said, popping back to her feet with theatrical innocence.
Did I do that?
Sorry, my hand slipped. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. In 47 previous fights, no challenger had ever managed to draw first blood from their champion. Many had never managed to draw blood at all. Vexthera spun around, its eyes now blazing with fury rather than confidence.
Impossible.
No human possesses such speed. Oh, sweetie, Sarah said, her voice dripping with condescension. You really haven't done your homework, have you? Here I thought the mighty Zentari Empire would at least research their opponents before trying to exterminate them. The champion charged again, this time leading with a devastating swipe of its claws that would have decapitated a lesser opponent. Sarah ducked under the attack and delivered a precise strike to Vexthera's wrist, severing several tendons. 2 of the alien's claws went limp and useless. You see, Sarah continued conversationally, as if she weren't currently engaged in mortal combat, humans might not be the biggest or the strongest species in the galaxy. But we've got something that most of you warrior races seem to lack. Vexthera backed away, cradling its injured arm. For the first time in its life, the champion was experiencing something it had never felt before, doubt. What? It gasped, purple blood dripping from multiple wounds. Sarah's expression hardened, and for a moment, the playful facade dropped completely. The arena lights seemed to dim as something cold and terrible filled her eyes.
Experience.
What happened next would be talked about in hushed whispers throughout the galaxy for generations to come. Sarah Chun, a human female weighing barely 130 pounds, proceeded to systematically dismantle a creature that outweighed her by 600 pounds and possessed natural weapons that could cut through starship armor. She moved like liquid mercury, flowing around Vexthera's increasingly desperate attacks with an efficiency that was both beautiful and terrifying. Every strike she landed was precisely calculated, targeting nerve clusters and weak points with surgical precision. She wasn't just fighting, she was conducting a masterclass in applied violence. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their unbeatable champion was reduced to a bleeding, desperate mess. Vexthera's roars of fury gradually transformed into whimpers of pain and fear. "Please," the mighty champion gasped, falling to its knees as Sarah circled it like a predator toying with wounded prey.
I yield.
"I surrender." Sarah stopped in front of the fallen alien, her head tilted thoughtfully.
Oh, now you want to surrender? That's interesting.
"Tell me, Vex, did the colonists on Meridian get a chance to surrender before your fleet turned them into ash?" The champion's eyes widened with terror as understanding dawned. This wasn't just a trial by combat. This was an execution, and Sarah Chun was the executioner.
Part 2, The Reckoning.
The silence in the arena was so complete that the only sound was Vexthera's labored breathing and the steady drip of its blood on the metal floor. 60,000 spectators held their breath, waiting to see what the impossible human would do next. Sarah crouched down until she was eye level with the fallen champion, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across the entire arena. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Vex? When I kill someone, they deserve it." She stood up and began walking toward the arena center, her back turned to the wounded alien. The crowd gasped as Vexthera, seeing an opportunity, gathered its remaining strength for one final desperate attack. The champion launched itself forward with a roar of pure rage, all four arms extended, claws gleaming as they reached for Sarah's unprotected back. It was a move born of desperation and pride, the last gambit of a warrior who would rather die than live with the shame of defeat. Sarah didn't turn around.
She didn't even flinch.
At the last possible moment, she stepped slightly to the left and drove her elbow backward with mechanical precision. The strike caught Vexthera directly in the throat, crushing its windpipe with an audible crack. The mighty champion crumpled to the ground, gasping for air that would never come. "Predictable," Sarah said, finally turning to look down at her dying opponent. "That's your problem, all of you. You're so used to relying on brute force that you never learned strategy. Never learned patience. Never learned that sometimes the best weapon isn't the biggest one." Vexthera's eyes were bulging now, its massive hands clawing at its throat in a futile attempt to restore airflow. The proud champion who had dominated the arena for years was reduced to writhing on the floor like a fish out of water. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some spectators were cheering, others were screaming in outrage, and many simply sat in stunned silence. The Zentari High Command, in their luxury viewing box, was having heated discussions that bordered on panic. Sarah activated her comm implant. "Jake, are you getting all this? Sarah, what have you done?" Jake's voice was a mixture of awe and horror. "The entire Zentari fleet is mobilizing. They're talking about glassing Earth in retaliation." "Let them talk," Sarah replied calmly, watching as Vexthera's struggles grew weaker. "They challenged us to trial by combat according to their own sacred laws. I'm just following their rules." "But you were supposed to survive for 10 minutes, not kill their champion." Sarah's laugh was devoid of warmth.
"Oh, Jake.
You still don't get it, do you? This was never about survival. This was about sending a message." The arena's medical team finally arrived, rushing toward the fallen champion with emergency equipment. Sarah made no move to stop them, but her expression suggested it was far too late for medical intervention. Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm. "Sarah, Vexthera's vital signs are flatline. The champion is dead." The announcement echoed through the arena's speaker system, confirming what everyone already knew. For the first time in the arena's history, a challenger had not just defeated but killed the reigning champion. Sarah walked to the center of the arena and looked up at the viewing boxes where the Zentari leadership sat in their ornate chairs, their reptilian faces frozen in shock and disbelief. "Citizens of the Zentari Empire," she called out, her voice amplified by the arena's sound system. "You wanted to test humanity's worth? You wanted to see if we deserve to exist in your galaxy? Well, congratulations. You've got your answer. She gestured toward Vexthara's lifeless form. Your unbeatable champion lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds against one human soldier.
Not a squad. Not a battalion. One person.
And not even our best. The crowd's murmur grew louder, a mixture of fear and excitement rippling through the stands. You see, Sarah continued, beginning to pace around the arena like a lecturer addressing a classroom, you made the same mistake that every bully makes. You assumed that because we're smaller, because we're newer to the galactic stage, we must be weaker. You looked at humanity and saw prey. She stopped directly beneath the High Command's viewing box and looked up at Admiral Croxtar, the Zentari fleet commander who had ordered the destruction of the Meridian colonies. But here's the thing about humans that you failed to understand. We don't just fight to survive.
We fight to win.
And when you threaten our families, our homes, our children, we don't just fight. We become something else entirely. Admiral Croxtar stood up, his massive frame towering over the arena even from his elevated position. Human, you may have defeated our champion through trickery and cowardice, but you are still vastly outnumbered. One ship against our entire fleet. Sarah's smile was absolutely terrifying.
One ship?
Oh, Admiral, you really haven't been paying attention, have you? She activated a holographic display from her wrist communicator, projecting images above the arena for all to see. The displays showed real-time footage from across the Zentari Empire's territory. Footage that made the crowd gasp in collective horror. Human battleships, sleek and deadly, were emerging from hyperspace at every major Zentari military installation. Not just one or two ships, but entire fleets that had somehow avoided detection until this very moment. You see, while you were all focused on this little gladiator show, Sarah explained, her voice carrying a note of professional satisfaction, the rest of humanity was positioning itself for what we call a strategic intervention. Every major Zentari military base, every shipyard, every command center is currently staring down the guns of a human battle fleet. The images continue to cycle through different locations, showing the same scene repeated across dozens of worlds. Zentari forces are scrambling to respond to the sudden appearance of human ships that hadn't been there moments before. Admiral Croxtar's face had gone from confident to pale green.
Impossible.
Our sensors would have detected such a massive fleet movement. Your sensors, Sarah said with obvious amusement, were designed to detect conventional faster-than-light travel. They're not really equipped to handle our new quantum displacement technology. Turns out that while you were busy playing gladiator games, humanity has been making some remarkable technological advances. Commander Morrison's voice came through her comm, tinged with barely contained glee. Sarah, I'm getting reports from across the Empire. The Zentari fleets are standing down. They're requesting immediate negotiations. How refreshing, Sarah replied. It's amazing how diplomatic everyone becomes when they realize they're outgunned. She turned back to the crowd, many of whom were now trying to leave the arena in panic. Ladies, gentlemen, and various other entities, I want to make something very clear. Humanity didn't start this conflict.
We didn't ask for war.
We were content to expand peacefully, to trade, to coexist.
Her voice hardened. But you chose violence.
You chose to murder innocent civilians. You chose to threaten our species with extinction. So we chose to show you exactly why that was a mistake. The arena's emergency lighting began flashing as evacuation protocols were activated.
But Sarah wasn't finished.
Here's how this is going to work from now on, she announced, her voice carrying over the chaos. The Zentari Empire is going to pay reparations for every human life lost in your unprovoked attacks. You're going to return all occupied human territories. And you're going to sign a non-aggression pact that your children's children will honor. Admiral Croxtar leaned forward in his viewing box. And if we refuse? Sarah looked up at him with the expression of someone explaining basic mathematics to a slow child. Then humanity will demonstrate why we've survived on a planet that actively tries to kill us every single day. We'll show you why we're the species that looked at the vacuum of space and decided it looked like a fun place to build a summer home. She gestured toward Vexthara's corpse. Your champion was impressive.
Really?
In his prime, he might have given our academy cadets a decent workout. But you made one fatal error in your calculations.
Which was?
Sarah's smile was absolutely predatory. You assumed that a human fighting for sport would be the same as a human fighting for survival. You've never seen what we become when we're protecting our families. When someone threatens our children. When they turn our colonies into radioactive graveyards. She began walking toward the arena exit, stepping over the champion's body without a second glance. The trial by combat is complete. According to your own laws, humanity has proven its worth. But more than that, we've proven that we're not the prey you thought we were. As she reached the exit, Sarah turned back one final time.
Oh, and Admiral?
The next time you're thinking about picking a fight with a species you've never faced before, you might want to do a little more research. Because if there's one thing humans excel at, it's turning the predator into the prey. The arena doors closed behind her with a finality that echoed through the stunned silence. In the aftermath, as news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy, other species began to reassess their relationships with the newcomers from Earth. The humans, they realized, were not the weak, defenseless prey they had appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who had learned not just to fight, but to win. And in the cold vacuum of space, Sarah Chen's laughter echoed through the comm channels as 60 human battle fleets held the entire Zentari Empire at gunpoint, waiting for their answer. The galaxy would never be the same. Subscribe to my channel for more sci-fi stories and visit my channel for the full story.